How to Sell Better is a record of the month recording for members of the Businessmen's Record Club. It conveys an important message for salesmen, but its audience can include just about everyone. For which one of us should not be interested in effective salesmanship? No matter what we do in life, we are all engaged in selling ideas as well as goods and services, selling our talents, our point of view, and our decisions to friends and associates, to committees and board members, and to our boss. Yes, the author of this record, Ed J. Hegarty, can help anyone in business or in any other walk of life to a more successful career through a program of self-improvement in salesmanship. Ed Hegarty is well qualified as a guide and instructor in the art of persuasion. He has had 40 years of experience in every phase of selling, as a seller, buyer, writer, and teacher. He is the author of 7 books, all published by McGraw-Hill, including How to Write a Speech, Showmanship in Public Speaking, How to Run a Sales Meeting, Building a Sales Training Plan, Making Your Sales Meetings Sell, and Get the Prospect to Help You Sell. After a long and distinguished career with Westinghouse, he recently retired as the Director of Sales Training for the appliance division of that well-known firm. And out of Ed's wealth of experience, you will hear real wisdom, distilled into simple language that hits home, without those fancy theories that often lead to confusion and inertia. You will also learn an effective formula for your own self-improvement in the months and years to come. The formula has 4 elements important to you as a salesman: your eyes, your ears, your mouth, and the way you practice. But now, let us begin right away to share the results of this formula by listening to the words of your speaker, Mr. Hegarty himself.
How to sell better. That's my subject today. I like to talk on this subject, for it is surefire. I'm certain that the suggestions I offer can help you sell better. Why? Well, listen to this story. One summer I took a job selling a book called Improve Your Selling. It was a wonderful book, packed full of sales wisdom, priced $1. I had great success with my sales interviews. Every prospect I showed the book to told me it could be a mighty helpful book. But here's the sad part. Nobody bought it. Finally, I asked one kindly old gentleman who had said the book looked good and that he would like to read it and own it, "Why don't you buy one then?" You know what he said? He said, "Son, I'm not selling half as well as I know how now." That goes for all of us. And why aren't we? It's because nobody has sold us on what a better selling job can mean to us. To sell better, we have to put out some effort, change a few things. And we are not sold enough on putting out the effort or in changing. As a salesman, you know that your prospect asks this question: what will your product or service mean to me? He asks that about anything you try to sell him. You too ask that question. I do. Everybody does. You're asking that right now. What do I get out of listening to this guy's record? How is it going to help me? Why should I spend the time? As a sales trainer who has trained thousands of salesmen, I know you have that attitude because it's natural, it's sensible, it's logical. So if I didn't think I could leave an idea with you, I would have a lot of crust making this talk to you. Now, why do I think I can leave an idea or two with you? Well, I have left these same ideas with other salesmen, and I have letters and statements from those men saying that they have used the idea. And best of all, those ideas have helped make sales. Note that. I presented the idea, the salesman used them. That's the fundamental of any training. It's not what you know, it's what you use of what you know that makes sales. A poor salesman may know as much as a top salesman, but the top man uses more of what he knows. That's the difference, the big difference. So as you hear these suggestions today, ask yourself, how can I use that idea? Don't say, that idea won't work in my business. You know, the world is full of failures who think like that. The salesman who wants to sell better will ask, how can I adapt that idea and use it? Thus, if you're going to sell better, you have to want to sell better. Get that? You have to want to. And I'll add one word to that. You have to want to enough. If you wanted to learn to play the piano, or to play golf, or to fly an airplane, and you wanted to enough, you could learn those things. The best salesman you know has learned how to sell better. You may wonder how he did it. Well, I'll give you his secret. First, he wanted to enough, and second, he learned bit by bit, every day, on the job. Perhaps if you ask that best salesman, what did you learn today, he might say, I don't know. But he has learned something, for he has formed the habit of learning because he wanted to learn. He has learned how to learn. You ask, how can I do that? Well, here's a formula. Use your eyes, your ears, your big mouth, and practice. Of course, you're using your eyes now. I suggest you use them better. Most of us are poor at observing. To study law or medicine or accounting, you have to go to school. But to study selling, all you need to do is to walk into a retail store or a railroad train or even a hotel. You can learn selling just by using your eyes. Here's an example. Not long ago, I went into the Biltmore Hotel in Los Angeles. The clerk said, the only room I can give you, Mr. Hegarty, is one of the large rooms. It won't be made up, but we will get it made up as soon as possible. A bellman took me up to the room. When he opened the door, I didn't like what I saw. Display tables around the room, tables covered with sheets, no sign of a bed, and only one small chair. I tell you, it was discouraging. I was hot and tired, for it was late in the evening. I had just come off the train, and I said to the bellman, I guess I better look for a room in another hotel. The man said, maybe that's a good idea, Mr. Hegarty. Note, he didn't disagree with me. He was giving me the yes, but treatment, one I'm sure you all know. But he didn't say, wait, I'll get you a telephone book. Instead, he walked over, opened a bathroom door. But look at this bath, he said. There are plenty of towels, soap, hot water. Why don't you have a hot bath, put on some clean clothes, go down, have a nice dinner, and by the time you come back, the room will be made up. Well, that's exactly what I did. Why? Because the bellman had helped me decide. You may ask, what can I learn from an experience like that? Well, I met a man who was working for his boss, didn't I? Working for his company, thinking of his company's interests. Wouldn't we all be happier if we were a little more like that? Yes, I met a salesman who was selling, as a salesman should. We all have such experiences every day. All of us trade in retail stores. In those stores, you see good selling, bad selling, indifferent selling. Can't you learn from each kind? Why is it you like to trade in some stores and not in others? It's because of the way you're treated, isn't it? And I'll bet you one thing. In the stores you like, they greet you with a smile. The salesmen or saleswomen look like people you would like to do business with. If you want to sell better, why not start by trying to look like a fellow your customers would like to do business with? The first step in that kind of a look is a good smile. Isn't that right? A smile makes friends. One of the poets has said, the man worthwhile is the man who can smile when everything goes dead wrong. Now, it takes real character to smile when things are wrong, but why do so many of us frown when things are going well? One day I was walking up the ramp in the Cleveland Railroad Terminal. A fellow said to me, hey, Mac, I'd like to ask you a question. I thought he was a panhandler, and I started to brush by him. But this man was no panhandler. He was a prosperous-looking man about 50 to 55 years old. Gray hair, ruddy complexion, good-looking tweed suit. The suit stopped me. I'll bet it cost $200 if it cost 1 cent. And as I looked at the suit, I saw one other thing. This man was a bit tight, looped, under the influence of another thing. This man was a bit tight, looped, under the influence of intoxicating liquor. Well, this was something, for it was only 10 o'clock in the morning. Now, any of us can get a bit that way after 5 o'clock in the evening. But a fellow who can be in that condition, fried, at 10 o'clock in the morning, must be a genius. And I always have time to stop and talk to a genius. So I stopped and asked, okay, what's your question? The fellow said, why is everybody frowning? I repeated, why is everybody frowning? Yes, the drunk said, I've been standing here for a half hour, and you're the first guy coming up this ramp with a smile on his face. I suppose I had a silly grin, but at least I wasn't frowning. "Stand here and I'll prove it to you," the drunk said. And so we stood there side by side. What he said was true. Everybody coming up that ramp was frowning. "Why is everybody frowning?" the drunk asked again. I couldn't answer. Since then, on street corners and hotel lobbies, I watch people when they don't know they're being watched. They are all frowning. Why? It's because they are thinking of their own problems, isn't it? Is that why you go around with a frown on your face? Just think of the extra work that takes. It takes 27 face muscles to frown. It takes 8 face muscles to smile. Here we are, working ourselves to death. For what? I'll tell you something else about frowning. You can't frown when you try to. I demonstrate that when I speak to audiences. I say, "I want you all to frown at me. I'll count 3 and I want you to frown." Imagine I'm somebody you don't like. Your mother-in-law, your landlord, the dirty competitor who always cuts the price, someone you don't like. I'll count 3, then you frown at me. Okay, now, 1, 2, 3, frown. Let's try that exercise. I'll count 3 and you frown at the record. Will you do that, please? Okay, now, 1, 2, 3, frown. See, you can't do it. Why do I know you're not frowning? Well, I can't get an audience to frown. I've tried it with hundreds of groups, and I'm sure I can't get you to frown. But a smile, that's something different. It's easy to get an audience to smile. I ask the listeners to smile at me. I count 3. I say smile, and a smile lights every face. Get that? A smile lights every face. Now I'll count 3 for you, and you smile at the record. Will you do that, please? 1, 2, 3, smile. See? A smile lights every face. And when you smile, don't you look much more like a man the customer would like to do business with? I know that when you smiled at the record just now, some of you looked as if you were trying to suck on a lemon and smile at the same time. You can't do that. So I'm going to give you a simple exercise that will improve that smile of yours. Tomorrow when you get up and go into the bathroom and look in the mirror, I know that what you see is going to discourage you. But you can improve that smile of yours by using this exercise. Now double up your fists, all of you. Put the inside of your fists, the knuckles against the side of your face, high by your cheekbones. Now as you look in the mirror, move your fists up and down, relaxing the facial muscles. Do that 10 times. Now take the hands away and smile at yourself again. You'll notice the difference. Your smile will be improved. Do this every morning for the next 10 mornings. Do it, and you'll greet your customer with a better smile. A good smile makes friends. It makes customers want to do business with you. Now, a word of caution. Don't listen to this record and say, "This fella says if you smile, you got it made." I don't say that. I say a smile helps. Do you want to buy anything from a sourpuss? Okay, why should your prospects? Another way to use your eyes is to read for self-improvement. I advise salesmen read one self-improvement book each month. Why do so many salesmen stay in the same rut? Isn't it because they don't expose themselves to ideas? And what's the easiest way a salesman can expose himself to ideas? It's through reading, isn't it? That's basic. That's fundamental. That's common sense. Any educator will agree. Salesmen tell me, "Ed, the reason you suggest reading is because you write books and you want to sell books." I agree. I like to sell books, but every now and then I meet a salesman who tells me about a big order he got, a new customer he sold. How? Through using an idea he got from one of my books. You can't laugh off that kind of evidence. That's why I suggest reading self-improvement books. Not my books especially, anybody's books. If you don't read, you don't expose yourself to the kind of ideas that can make a few extra dollars for you. Too many salesmen confine their reading to the comics, the sport pages, the business news. All of those are good. The comics and the sport pages give you conversational material. The business news tells you what's going on. But in addition, read for ideas to help you sell better. Material on how to sell, on self-improvement, and inspirational material too. Every salesman needs inspiration. Such material builds you up, gives you confidence, helps you go back after turndowns. I've said that the good salesman learns something every day. One night in New York a few years ago, I went to see the play Death of a Salesman. This play is the story of a salesman who made a mess of his business life and his family life and winds up a suicide. It's a depressing story. I went to the show with a young fellow about 30 years old. After the second act, this young fellow said, "Mr. Hegarty, this discourages me. I'm a salesman. Will I wind up like that?" "Look," I told him, "Willie Loman. That's the name of the old man in the play, is just a symbol of any man in any business who stops learning. And Willie is such a symbol." Then I asked this young man this question: "What self-improvement book have you read in the last month?" I know most of you would be embarrassed if I asked that question of you. And why don't you read to improve? I am 68 years old and I read 2 self-improvement books each month. I get ideas from that reading. So I say read self-improvement books. You will get ideas from them. You have 2 eyes. Learn to use them better, to observe how others sell you, to look for ideas in the books and magazines that collect ideas for you. Another help in selling better is this: learn to listen. Most of us are poor listeners. We're much like the husband of the woman in Chicago. She applied for a divorce. The judge asked her why she wanted the divorce. "My husband is impertinent," she said. The woman was a giant of a woman. The judge looked at her on the stand, then down to the little shrimp of a husband sitting at the counsel's table. "Do you mean he talks back to you?" the judge asked, pointing at the husband. "Oh, no," the woman said. "He wouldn't dare do that. It's the exasperating way he listens. The exasperating way he listens." Most of us are exasperating in the way we listen. Now let's pause while we turn the record, and I'll give you some suggestions for improving your listening. Most of us are like that husband in the story, exasperating listeners. How can we correct that fault? By understanding this fact. To listen properly, you have to follow 3 steps. First, you have to hear what's said. Second, you have to let the other know that you have heard. And third, you have to show an interest. Most of us do well on that first step. We hear what's said, but we don't do well on the second and third steps. We don't let the speaker know we have heard, and we don't show an interest. Now I'll give you a suggestion that will improve your listening 100%. If you follow this suggestion, I guarantee you will let the speaker know that you have heard, and he will see that you are interested. That suggestion is, learn to listen with your eyes. Joke writers say a woman can do anything a man can do except listen. But a woman is good at one kind of listening that men don't do so well. That is listening with her eyes. When you tell the little wife about what you said to the boss and what he said to you, notice how she looks you in the eye. That makes you feel good, doesn't it? Important. But when your customer tells you something, you look at the floor, the ceiling, some papers on the desk. He may think that instead of paying attention, you're trying to figure out what you will say next. But when you look him in the eye, he knows you are listening, and he feels important. I can demonstrate what it means to listen with your eyes if you will look at the machine that is playing this record. Okay, both eyes on the machine while I talk to you. Listen with your eyes. Listen with your eyes. Listen with your eyes. Listen with your eyes. Notice how quiet it has become in this room? You can hear a pin drop. That's because I had your attention 100%. You show your customer that he is important when you listen to him, so learn to listen properly. It pays. The next step in my formula for listening better is to improve on how you use that big mouth of yours. Yes, train yourself always to talk in terms of the customer's interest and in language the customer understands. The first demand of any customer is, tell me something. Do you always do that? The other day I went into an appliance store. There were 2 Westinghouse irons on the counter, and the irons looked somewhat alike. One sold for $11.95, the other for $7.95. I asked the little girl behind the counter, what's the difference between these 2 irons? They're both made by Westinghouse. They look alike. What's the difference? The girl looked at the irons a while. Then she looked up at me, smiled, and said, $4. You laugh at that, but some of the sales stories you tell may be just as helpful to your customer. I'll show you what I mean by this sales pitch on a simple wooden pencil. Listen and see if you can detect what's wrong with it from the sales angle. Ready? Here goes. I have here what looks like an ordinary wooden pencil, but this is no ordinary pencil. See that yellow enamel? There are 6 coats of that, each baked on. Look, I can press my thumbnail into the enamel and the yellow shows through. This eraser assembly is on tight. I have tugged at it and twisted it, but it won't come loose. It says here on the side of the pencil that it is wood clinched. And notice that this eraser comes out. It's in this metal sleeve. It can be turned over when it is worn or replaced by a new eraser. The lead is a special type of carbon. On the side of the pencil it says microatomic carbon. Now this pencil doesn't sell for 25 cents or 15 cents or even 10 cents. No, this fine pencil sells at retail 2 for 15 cents. That's the pitch. You may say, Ed, that's a good sales story on a pencil. But consider this. What did I tell you about what this pencil will do for you? For instance, I never said this pencil is balanced. You could write all day with that pencil without tiring your hand. I never said this lead makes a clean black mark, a mark that is easy to read, or that the eraser is soft and will erase the mark completely without rubbing a hole in the paper. That would be telling you what the pencil does for you. That's what your customer wants to know. What will I get out of it? We would all sell better if every word we used helped answer that question. Another suggestion on your speaking is make yourself clear. When we were babies, we could make ourselves clear. We let out a howl and the whole family rushed to give us service. But we grew up, went to school, and got a vocabulary. And we like to use that vocabulary even though the other fellow might not understand some of the words we use. I believe in using the simplest words we can. To illustrate the power of one-syllable words, I am going to say the first 2 words of 5 proverbs and let you say the rest of the proverb. Do I make myself clear? I say the first 2 words, you say the remaining words. Will you do that, please? Ready now? 1, 2, 3. Loud, please. All's well. Louder, please. All's well. That's better. Now for the second. A stitch. A bird. A new broom. A miss. In those 5 proverbs, there are 35 one-syllable words, and every youngster out of the 8th grade knows them. And they are powerful words, good, strong, selling words. Why do we continue to use the more difficult words when small words are so powerful? In my classes, the young fellows starting in selling show the need for training and how to say things simply. In practice demonstrations on a refrigerator, they say, notice how easy it is to remove this meat keeper. Why don't they say, take it out? Don't the simple words make the task sound easier? Do you think that same fellow at a burlesque show would yell, remove, remove, remove? In the post office the other night, a woman asked me, does that outgoing mean out of town? Along the roads of Ohio, signs tell there is a refuse receptacle ahead. They mean trash can. We use many words like that. Then because we know a word, we think everybody knows it. 2 women were complaining about their husbands. One said, I'd like to divorce mine. The other said, why don't you take him to court and charge him with incompatibility? The first said, I would if I could catch him at it. You laugh at that, but that's how we talk and write too. There was a plumber in Brooklyn who made the amazing discovery that he could clean drains with hydrochloric acid. He wrote the government in Washington about it. In time, a letter came back that said, the efficacy of hydrochloric acid is indisputable, but the toxic deterioration produced is incompatible with metallic permanence. When the plumber got this letter, he was filled with joy. The government had approved his idea. He was a foreign-born fellow, and that night he took the letter down to the club and showed it to the other boys from his country. The friends agreed that Tony should write and thank the government for approving the idea. The next day, Tony did that. In time, there came another letter from Washington that said, there is no doubt of the effectiveness of hydrochloric acid, but the final responsibility for the production of toxic residue is wholly yours. Again, the plumber rejoiced. Again, there was a celebration at the club. This time, all of the boys signed the letter thanking the government. A week later, a letter came back from Washington without big words. It said, "Tony, don't use hydrochloric acid. It eats hell out of pipes." That makes you laugh, doesn't it? Yet most of us are like the fellow in Washington. We don't take the trouble to use words that will make our meaning clear, words that everybody will understand. You will sell better if you do that. The next step in that formula for selling better is practice. Get the habit of practice and rehearsal. Paderewski, the great pianist, said, "If I don't practice for one day, I know it. If I don't practice for 1 week, the critics know it. If I don't practice for 1 month, the public knows it." Most of us will practice our music or our golf swing, but how many of us will practice our demonstration or rehearse our sales story? The other day in a store, I saw 2 salesmen in the rear talking to one another. It looked as if they were arguing about something. Well, I'm Irish, and if I see an argument, I always check on the chances of dealing myself a hand. But you know what these boys told me? "We're practicing our demonstration," one said, and that's exactly what they were doing. One fellow was acting as a salesman, the other as a shopper, and they were going to it. Don't you think those fellows will sell better after that practice? Here is an illustration of what practice does. A number of years ago, Westinghouse developed a method of cooking vegetables on the top of a stove that saved vitamin. We called it vitamized cooking. The method called for using little or no water, cooking in a covered utensil, no stirring at all, bringing the water to a boil quickly, and then finishing the cooking on low, measured heat. As our salesman told the story of this method of cooking, he went through the motions of a woman cooking vegetables. He said she covers them with water and boils them until she thinks they are done. Then she takes the handle of the pan in one hand like this, holds the lid in place like this, walks over to the sink and pours the water down the sink. Our story was that the vitamin content was cooked out of the vegetables and into the water. When the woman poured the water down the sink, the vitamins went with it. Salesmen, thousands of them, were taught to tell this story and do this demonstration of holding the imaginary lid in place on an imaginary pan and pouring the imaginary water down a sink. It was a good demonstration, and it was effective because all of us have seen the cook at our house do that same thing hundreds of times. The boys practiced that demonstration, and they got good at it. And they sold a lot of stoves. But they weren't as good as an Indian I saw do it in Cleveland. I was walking through this arcade when I saw this Indian. He was selling an herb medicine that was the most wonderful medicine I've ever heard described. It would grow hair on bald heads, turn gray hair black, give you all the vitamins and minerals you need, restore your youthful vim and vigor, cure rheumatism, lumbago, backache. I am telling you, it was wonderful. I don't know what Mrs. Hegarty did with the bottle I bought. You may wonder why I stopped to watch this Indian. Well, I always watch street salesmen selling things. They have to be good. They have to stop you while you're on your way somewhere and hold your attention. So I always stop to watch them. I learn from them. It's one of the ways I use my eyes. I might tell you this, though. I hadn't watched this fellow long before I began to suspect that he was not a real Indian. He had feathers and war paint and all the trappings, but somehow he didn't seem real. I'll tell you what made me suspect him. He had a habit of punctuating each paragraph with this question: "Get the print." Now, I'm no expert on Indian dialects, but that just didn't seem right. But to get back to the story, in the midst of his pitch on this medicine, the Indian came to our vegetable cooking demonstration. He said, "Yous people don't know how to cook vegetables. You douse them in water, boil them until you think they are done, until all the vitamins are in the water. Then you take the pan like this, over to the sink, and pour them vitamins and that water down the sink. You'd be healthier if you drank the water and poured the vegetables down the sink. Get the point?" That was our demonstration just as we had taught it, and I was mighty proud that the Indian thought our demonstration good enough to use. But the Indian didn't stop where we stopped. He had practiced and rehearsed more than we had. He said, "And what happens to them vitamins when they go down the sink? I'll tell you. They go down into the sewer, and the rats eat 'em, and they get strong and you get weak." That's what practice and rehearsal does for you. It improves your story, improves your demonstration. You agree, don't you, that it pays to practice and rehearse? That if you practice and rehearse, you will improve? We all agree to that. Then why don't we practice and rehearse more? I started this advice by giving you a formula for self-improvement. Here it is. Use your eyes, your ears, your big mouth, and practice. It's important that you learn to do this. Important to you, important to your company, important to your family. It makes no difference if you are the best salesman in your town, or the best in your country, or if you're the best salesman in your business. Let's say you're that right now, the best salesman in your business. Okay, even so, there's one fundamental truth about anybody that's good. I can give you that truth in 9 simple words. Those words are, when I stop getting better, I stop being good. Think over those words. When I stop getting better, I stop being good. Repeat them with me, will you please? Okay now, 1, 2, 3. When I stop getting better, I stop being good. 9 words, but they explain why nobody can stand still. You either improve or lose ground. You want to improve, don't you? Then don't put it off. Start today, training your eyes, your ears, and your big mouth to help you sell better. I wish you all success at it.